The call came in while I had my hands wrapped around a pair of focus mitts, watching one of my fighters throw a lazy jab that wouldn't have troubled a mosquito. "We need your house for New Year's," my mother said. "No hello, no how are you?" "Owen's in-laws are flying in from Denver." "I'm away that weekend," I told her, stepping to the side as my fighter, a 19-year-old named Devin, tried to convince me that stumbling into the ropes counted as defensive footwork. "Again," I said to him, and turned back to the phone. "You can rent an Airbnb." "Perfect," Mom said, like I'd handed her a gift instead of a boundary. "You'll be gone anyway." "That's not what 15 people, Reagan. Your house has the most bedrooms. It only makes sense." I lowered the mitts. Devin froze mid-combination, sensing weather. "I'm not giving 15 strangers my house." "They're not strangers. They're Priya's family." "Exactly," I said, and waited for the word to land the way it was supposed to. It didn't. My mother has never once, in 40 years, absorbed the word exactly the way I intend it. She hummed instead, thinking out loud, and then she said, almost cheerfully, "Well, it doesn't matter now anyway. We already made copies of your key." Devin finally connected with the bag. I didn't notice, because every thought in my skull had gone very quiet and very still. "You did what?" "You gave us one for emergencies, sweetheart." "This isn't an emergency. This is a vacation with a guest list." She didn't hear that either. She never hears the sentence that isn't useful to her. "We'll take excellent care of everything," she said, and hung up before I could answer, the way she always does when she's decided the conversation is over and doesn't care whether I have. I stood in the middle of my gym holding 2 focus mitts and thought about every time that sentence had preceded a small disaster. The 4th of July, when Owen used my backyard because his balcony didn't have the vibe, and I spent the next morning fishing hot dog buns out of my koi pond. The Thanksgiving mom volunteered me to host 22 people and then complained my chairs weren't festive enough. The weekend my aunt used 6 towels in one shower and never explained how. Owen's bachelor party, which I had explicitly banned from my house and which happened at my house anyway, complete with a traffic cone in my bathtub and a man named Wyatt asleep under my piano, a man nobody present could identify, including, as far as I could tell, Wyatt himself. Every time I'd absorbed it because that was my role in this family. Reagan has room. Reagan has time. Reagan doesn't have a husband or kids, so Reagan's whole life is one long open calendar available for booking. Something about hearing that my mother had duplicated my house key without asking, not even bothering to frame it as a request, finally made the pattern look absurd instead of painful. I train fighters for a living. One of the first things I teach a beginner is that the punch that actually hurts you is rarely the biggest one. It's the jab you've let land a dozen times because you refuse to move your head. Eventually, the problem isn't the jab, it's your decision to keep standing there, so I decided to move my head. "Coach," Devin said carefully, lowering his gloves, "you're doing the face." "What face?" "The one right before you make me run stairs." I set the mitts down. "No stairs today," I said. "I'm moving." That part, at least, wasn't retaliation. I'd been planning it for 4 months. My gym had expanded into the unit next door. I'd picked up 2 amateur fighters who were about to turn pro, and I'd found a townhouse 12 minutes from the gym instead of my current 40-minute commute through construction. The 5-bedroom house had made sense 8 years ago, when I still imagined filling it with something. Now I used 3 of those bedrooms to store old gloves, resistance bands, and a stationary bike that had quietly become a coat rack. I'd already signed the paperwork. The movers were booked for the 29th. My family knew none of this because my family only asks questions about my life when the answers might affect parking, sleeping arrangements, or money. I'd planned to tell them after New Year's. Standing there in the gym, mitts abandoned on the mat, I saw no reason to save the surprise, so I made 3 calls. The first was to the moving company. Could we push everything up a day? There'd been a cancellation. They could do it. The second was to a storage facility near the new townhouse where I rented 2 units. the big kind. The third was to an Airbnb host named Nora, who owned something listed as Cozy New Year's Cabin, Sleeps 2. A description so honest it made me laugh out loud in an empty gym. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a porch. 40 minutes from my old house on the far side of a lake nobody visited in winter. I booked it for 2 adults, 2 nights, Mom and Dad. Then I ordered 12 cardboard boxes. Not 12 identical boxes, that would have been lazy. I ordered 1 enormous shipping crate, big enough to move a refrigerator, and then a box that fit inside that one, and another inside that, and so on, each smaller than the last, until the final box was about the size of a jewelry case. I spent $40 on packing tape, another $20 on black wrapping paper, and $7 on the loudest, pinkest plastic toy key I could find, nearly a foot long, with a yellow star on the end that squeaked when you pressed it. I bought 2, 1 was backup. I'm a professional. By the 29th, the movers had arrived. For 9 hours, my house slowly disappeared. Sofa into storage, beds into storage, the dining table, the television, the kitchen chairs, even the shower curtains. I left the utilities running. I left toilet paper in every bathroom because I was setting a boundary, not committing a war crime. I left 1 folding chair in the garage because the lead mover, a soft-spoken man named Tomas, looked around the emptying living room and asked, "15 people are coming here?" "Yes." He glanced at the single chair. "And you're leaving 1 seat?" "Yes." He nodded slowly, like a man revising his opinion of me upward. Diabolical. "Thank you." By sunset, the house echoed. I stood in the center of the living room and clapped once, just to hear the sound travel down the empty hallway. It was, genuinely, one of the more satisfying moments of my adult life. Then, Tomas and I carried in the giant black crate and set it dead center on the bare floor. In silver marker across the top, I'd written, "For Mom, Happy New Year." Inside was the second box, inside that, the third. And so on, down through all 12, to the pink plastic key nestled in the smallest one, a tag looped around its star that read, "Your new spare key." Underneath the key, an envelope. I looked at the whole arrangement for about 10 seconds, turned off the lights, and left. New Year's Eve, 3:12 p.m. I was 3 hours away in a hotel lounge near a regional boxing card, where one of my fighters was competing the next night when my doorbell camera lit up my phone with a notification. I opened it to a full convoy. 2 SUVs, a rental sedan, a minivan, 15 people, 2 dogs, 7 rolling suitcases, a cooler, a folded card table, something that might have been a portable fondue fountain, and my mother marching toward the front door in a beige coat like she was leading an invasion. Owen trailed behind her, carrying 2 suitcases and the expression of a man slowly realizing that being the favorite child comes with administrative duties. Mom produced her copied key. It worked. I'd deliberately left the old lock untouched. The door swung open. She stopped in the frame. The crowd behind her compressed like an accordion hitting a wall. For several seconds, nobody moved. Finally, Owen said, "Why is there no furniture?" Mom stepped inside. Her voice bounced off bare walls. "Reagan!" Nothing. "Reagan!" Still nothing. Owen came in behind her. "Mom, she said she was away." "I know that. I'm calling for the house." "You're yelling at drywall." "Because the house is gone." The house, for the record, remained fully and structurally present. This distinction did not improve her mood. More relatives filed in behind them, murmuring theories. Maybe it's a minimalist thing. Maybe the furniture's upstairs. Owen went to check and came back down a moment later. The upstairs is also minimalist. Then somebody spotted the crate. Mom crossed the empty living room and read the silver lettering aloud. Her whole posture changed. "There," she said, turning to the crowd, satisfied. "See, she left instructions." Owen eyed the 6-foot black box. Maybe there are linens inside. There were not. She tore into the first layer. Box 2. She frowned. Box 3. By box 5, a small crowd had gathered, and one of the dogs had lost interest and lain down on the bare floor. By box 7, somebody, later confirmed to be Priya's cousin, had started filming. "This had better be the house keys," Mom announced to the room, ripping into box 8. "We already have the house key," Owen said. "Don't correct me." Box 9, box 10. Priya's mother whispered, "Maybe it's jewelry." And Owen said, without much confidence, "She doesn't really buy Mom jewelry." And Mom snapped, "She might start." Box 11. Mom was breathing hard now. Owen held box 12, the tiny one, and looked at her. "You open it," he said. "I've opened 11. Exactly. You have momentum." She snatched it, tore off the lid, and there it was, the giant, unmistakable, aggressively neon pink plastic key with its yellow star. Silence. Actual, total silence. Then the key squeaked, on its own, or possibly because someone's elbow brushed it. Nobody could later agree on how. My mother lifted it slowly and read the tag attached to the star. "Your new spare key." According to no fewer than 6 phone recordings that reached me by nightfall, she then walked outside and tried the plastic key in the actual front door lock. It did not fit. It was, structurally, a plastic toy. She rotated it and tried again. "Try it," she told Owen. "Mom, it's a toy key." "You don't know that. It has a cartoon star on it. Maybe it's a European style." There are moments in a person's life when the choices that made them who they are suddenly make complete sense. That was one of mine. Owen didn't try the key. Instead, he went back to the smallest box, found the envelope, opened it, read the note inside, and then sat down on the bare floor because there was nowhere else to sit. "What?" Mom said. He handed her the paper. She read it aloud, her voice dropping with every line. "Congratulations, Mom. Since you decided I should rent an Airbnb while you use my house, I rented one. For you." Below it, an address, and under that, "Cozy New Year's cabin, sleeps 2." She stared at the paper, then at 15 relatives standing in an empty living room, then back at the paper. "Well," she said finally, "some of you are children. You can share." "Mom," Owen said, "the youngest person here is 26. Then curl up." At 3:41, my phone rang. I stepped out of the hotel lounge to take it. "Where is your sofa?" she said, no greeting. "Storage." "The beds." "Storage." "The television, the dining table, the coffee maker." "Storage, storage, storage." The sound she made after that could only be described as spiritual injury. "You stored an entire house to spite me." "No, I'm moving." Silence. Not ordinary silence, the kind where you can hear someone rebuilding their understanding of reality one brick at a time. "You're moving? Without telling your mother?" "I told you I was away. I didn't say I'd disappeared." "Where?" "Near the gym." "What's the address?" "I haven't decided who gets that yet." She inhaled sharply, and I recognized the sound the way I recognize a shoulder dropping before a hook. It was her tell before an attempt at emotional leverage. "Reagan, you have stranded 15 people on New Year's Eve." 15 people arrived at a house they were never invited to use. "You knew we were coming." "I knew you'd said we when I said no." Behind her, I could hear the chaos building. Someone asking where the towels were, someone else asking if the fridge was supposed to be empty. Then, Mom delivered the line that finally tipped me from irritated into amused. "You can't do this to me. I have a charcuterie board in the car." I actually pulled the phone away and looked at it. "I'm sorry, a what?" "A charcuterie board, Reagan. Do you have any idea what happens to brie without refrigeration?" I put her on speaker, so Devin, who'd tagged along for the fight weekend and was now demolishing a plate of nachos beside me, could hear it too. He nearly choked. "There is prosciutto," she continued, gathering steam. "There is imported salami, 3 kinds of olives." "That family has suffered enough," I said. She moved straight into logistics, the way she always does once the drama has run its natural course. "Call the movers, tell them to bring it all back. We only need it until Monday." "Book us somewhere else then, somewhere bigger." "I already did," I said. The cabin sleeps too. There are 15 of us. Then it isn't going to work. Another pause, gears audibly grinding. What are the others supposed to do? What adults usually do when they travel? Book a hotel? You expect us to pay? On New Year's Eve? I expected you not to copy my house key. That, finally, bought me 3 full seconds of silence. I noted it and moved on. Owen took the phone next. What the hell, Ray? Broad question. You knew everyone was flying in. I knew Mom decided to put them in my house after I already said no. They're Priya's family. They came a long way. That was optimistic of them. He lowered his voice. Mom's losing it. I can hear her. In the background, who packed the fondue machine? Look, Owen said. I didn't know she copied the key. That part wasn't me. I believed him. Owen has many flaws, but locksmith-adjacent conspiracy has never been one of them. Then this isn't your problem, I said. He was quiet for a moment, like the sentence was unfamiliar to him. So what do we do? Take Mom and Dad to the cabin, get everyone else a hotel. Hotels are expensive. Yes. Another new concept entering the Owen ecosystem, live and on the air. Consequences with a price tag. Mom grabbed the phone back before he could finish processing it. No, not okay. You are coming here and fixing this. No. Family does not treat family like this. Correct, I said, and hung up. By 5 o'clock, the family group chat had turned into a tribunal. My aunt accused me of humiliating my mother. My uncle mentioned elderly people involved, though the oldest person present was 62 and played in a competitive pickleball league. Priya wrote that her parents were mortified. Owen begged everyone to stop typing for 5 minutes. Mom reported with real outrage that I had removed the toilet brushes. An accusation I hadn't intended but wasn't going to correct because I found it delightful. Then my father weighed in, the way he only ever does once he thinks he can identify the winning side. Your mother may have handled it poorly, but there was no need to be cruel. So I sent one message, no argument, just screenshots. Mom, we need your house for New Year's. Me, I'm away. The house isn't available. Mom, great, we made copies of your key. Underneath, I attached the Airbnb confirmation for 2 guests and wrote, I said no. She copied my key anyway. I moved because I was already moving. I booked Mom and Dad somewhere clean because apparently I have more respect for her comfort than she has for mine. Everyone else is an adult. Happy New Year. The chat went quiet for 13 glorious minutes. Then my cousin Nina wrote, Wait, she copied your key after you said no? My aunt vanished from the thread without comment. My uncle reacted to my screenshot with a thumbs up, apparently forgetting whose side he'd been on an hour earlier. Priya's cousin, Grant, the same one who'd been filming the box opening, added, For the record, the cabin looked genuinely nice. Mom removed him from the group chat within the minute. At 7:20, Owen called again, sounding wrung out. We found rooms, not cheap. I'm sure. Mom's at the cabin now. How's she liking it? She walked in, looked at the bed, looked at Dad, and said, We are not sleeping vertically. I laughed for real. Then the host messaged her, he went on, Nora. Yeah, Mom tried to add 11 more guests to the reservation. 11? Apparently a few people might stop by was doing a lot of heavy lifting. What did Nora say? Occupancy is 2. And Mom? A long pause. She told her they're emotionally 2? I had to sit down. Then Owen's tone shifted, less exasperated, something closer to careful. You were really already moving. This wasn't some elaborate revenge thing. No, it was booked months ago. So the furniture would have been gone regardless. Yes. And she never once asked you about any of it. No. He went quiet again, and then said the thing that made the rest of it click into place for me. She told everyone you offered the house. There it was, the piece I'd been missing. 15 people hadn't shown up thinking they were crashing my life. They thought I'd volunteered it, generously, warmly, the way a good sister would. That was why Priya's parents had looked confused instead of guilty on the doorbell footage. That was why the cars had come loaded with a fondue fountain and 3 kinds of olives. My mother hadn't just ignored my no. She'd erased it and replaced it with a story where she'd arranged something wonderful on my behalf. I paid, she hosted, I provided, she presented. Same pattern, every holiday, different props. That was the moment the whole thing stopped being funny to me and started being clear. "Owen," I said, "I'm done lending Mom access to things she treats like she already owns." He didn't argue. Maybe he was too tired. Maybe he was still holding a fondue fountain in a hotel lobby. "Yeah," he said, "I get it." New Year's Day was quiet. My fighter won his bout by decision. Devin didn't fall out of the ring once, which I chose to interpret as personal growth. By late morning, Mom had sent 20-some messages. That I'd embarrassed her, abandoned family, ruined a holiday, wasted a charcuterie board that had apparently achieved near-mythic status in her retelling. I read every one and answered none. I forwarded the useful screenshots to myself for safekeeping, called my property manager and had the old locks changed, and quietly removed my parents from the emergency contact list on the house I no longer lived in. No announcement, just administration. A week later, she showed up at the gym during the slow part of the afternoon, while I was wrapping a teenager's hands before a sparring session. I saw her through the office glass before she saw me. She wasn't yelling, which surprised me enough that I finished the wrap before waving her in. She sat across the desk from me. For a full minute, neither of us spoke. "You made me look ridiculous," she said finally. "I didn't tell you to try a plastic key and a deadbolt." Her jaw tightened. "That's not what I mean. You could have warned me." "I did. I said no." "You could have warned me more clearly." "I said no 6 times across 2 conversations." "You know how I am." I sat with that sentence for a second, because I've heard people use it before, always the same way, as a kind of legal immunity, a way of saying I intend to keep doing this, and it's your job to adapt. "Yeah," I said. "I do." She looked at me, something shifting behind her eyes. "And now I know how I am, too." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means when I say no, I'm done explaining it a second time." She looked down at her purse for a moment. "Owen told me you really were moving, that it wasn't all some production." It wasn't. The boxes were, though. The boxes were absolutely punishment. She almost smiled. Then remembered she was still angry and put it away. "You embarrassed me in front of 15 people. You volunteered my house in front of 15 people, and then you humiliated me for it." "I was trying to help your brother's wife's family have a place to stay. You did that, not me." "I was helping you be generous." "I never agreed to be generous. You decided for me." That landed harder than she expected. I watched it land. She was quiet for a while. "Where do you live now?" she asked eventually. "Not telling you yet." Her head snapped up. "I'm your mother. My gym manager has a key before you do." "You gave your gym manager a key before your own parents?" "He hasn't made copies of it, so yes." She frowned, deeply offended, and stood up like she was leaving. Then she reached into her purse and set something on my desk, the giant pink plastic key. I looked at it, then at her. "Very funny," she said. I pressed the yellow star. It squeaked. She closed her eyes. "I hated that thing," she said. "I bought a backup." I opened my desk drawer and set the second one beside the first. For the first time since New Year's Eve, my mother laughed. One short, unwilling sound, immediately covered with a cough, like she'd been caught doing something she hadn't authorized herself to do. I didn't mistake it for an apology. I didn't need to. That was the other thing I'd finally learned. A boundary doesn't require the other person to understand it. It only requires you to hold it. She picked her purse back up. At the door, she turned. "So when do I get the new address?" "When I'm ready." "And when's that?" "I don't know yet." She nodded slowly, not happily, but she nodded, and left. 2 days later, Owen sent me a photo. Mom had framed the giant pink key and hung it in her kitchen, with a small plaque underneath that read, Reagan's Attitude, New Year's. I looked at it for a while. Then I sent him one back. A photo of the note from the bottom of the 12th box, the one she'd been too furious to notice that night, tucked beneath the envelope. I'd kept a copy before I left. It read, "New year, new locks, new address, same mom. Hopefully new boundaries." Owen wrote back, "She's going to hate that. She doesn't have the address to be mad about it in person," I replied. He sent back a string of laughing emojis, and that, more or less, was the whole point. My mother never lost a 5-bedroom house that New Year's. She'd never had one to begin with. What she lost was the assumption that anything belonging to me, my house, my key, my time, my patience, automatically belonged to her too. For years, I'd confused being useful with being loved, kept making things easy for everyone, certain that eventually someone would notice the person doing all the holding up. But people get comfortable with infrastructure. Nobody thanks the floor for staying under their feet. Nobody calls the plumbing to say it's doing a great job. You only hear from anyone when it stops working. I'd been the floor for a long time. The guest room, the extra ride from the airport, the emergency contact, the person who sighed, complained, and said yes anyway. Not anymore. Now I was just Reagan, boxing trainer, homeowner of a townhouse whose address existed on a strict need-to-know basis, occasional purchaser of deeply unnecessary plastic novelty keys, and a woman who had finally learned the simplest defensive move I teach every fighter who walks through my door. You don't have to absorb every punch that's thrown at you. Sometimes you just move your head. And if the person swinging at you insists on following you all the way to your new front door, you make absolutely sure they don't know where to find it.